Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. My name is Giridhari Das and welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. Now we're in the middle of this fascinating chapter on the mystic yoga powers, a great theme of yoga which kind of boggles the mind of modern man. And basically what these mystic powers were means by which the yogis, by controlling consciousness, they were able to hack nature. And we're going through we went through the 8 primary superpowers, and now we're going through the 10 secondary superpowers, and Krishna is explaining how the yogi would achieve each one of them. So we're in the middle of the descriptions of the 10 secondary mystic yoga powers. Now, of course, if you don't watch the entire Uddhava-gita course, make sure you just become a member of this channel. That's all you have to do, just become a member of the channel, and the instructions are here in the description of the video how you can do that. Not just subscribe, for which I thank you, but to become a member of the channel. Then you can access the whole course at Uddhava-gita.com. So here we are, we're in the 11th canto, 15th chapter, verse 19. Krishna says, "That purified living entity who fixes his mind on the extraordinary sound vibrations occurring within me as the personified sky and total life air prana, is then able to perceive within the sky the speaking of all living entities." So this is a power that you are able to access the speech, vacha, the speech of all living entities. So of course you can also understand all sorts of forms of communication. In the Yoga Sutras as well, one of the superpowers described there is the power to understand the speech of animals, like Dr. Dolittle. So this is, probably the same thing, the same concept is being shared here. Purport. Speech occurs by vibrating air within the sky. Now remember, when we say sky, it's a translation, for the totality of space, this thing we're moving around in. So when we say sky, when you see sky in these texts, it just means like, all the stuff in between things, the air, atmosphere, whatever you want to call it, this whole thing here, what's between me and this camera, that's sky. That's what they mean. So of course sound is the vibration carried through the air, we would call it. And so if you understand that, thereby acquires the ability to hear that which is vibrated at great distance. So it's the ability to pick up speech at great distance. Now, of course, this power was most famously used in the Bhagavad-gita. Because in the Bhagavad-gita, how does the Bhagavad-gita start? It says Dhritarashtra Vacha, and he's speaking with Sanjaya. So Dhritarashtra was the blind king, the father of the Kurus, who was way back home in his palace, and he couldn't go to battle. So he asked Sanjaya, who's also there with him, to tell him, look, what's going on in the battlefield. And Sanjaya had this power, and he could not only hear, but he could see what was going on. So television and radio, today we all have this power with television and radio. But so he was able to see and hear what was going on in the battlefield, and then narrate the conversation that Krishna was going to have with Arjuna. So the whole Bhagavad-gita is actually a use of this mystic power. The word prana indicates that the Lord is the personified life air of the individual living entities and for the total aggregate of life forms. So Krishna says that you get this power by meditating. Remember, all these powers require absolute, the highest level concentration. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali created the term samyama to explain that the last 3 steps of Ashtanga Yoga. So it's dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So these 3, concentration, meditation, absorption, these 3, he says, look, let's just call this samyama. So when he's talking about the different mystic powers in the Yoga Sutras, in chapter 3, in the Vibhuti Pad, he's just saying, what here is just Krishna saying, fixes his mind on me. Same thing. Dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So fixes his mind, you become completely absorbed, and that's why people can't do these powers today, because it requires a kind of intensity of focus that basically is non-existent in Kali Yuga, in this era, at this moment in Kali Yuga. It just requires such perfection of the mind, such a calm, clear, perfect mind to be able to stay in that one specific point and get absorbed and then hack nature through that point. So this fixes mind on the sound vibrations occurring within me. So seeing Krishna as the embodiment of sky, of this thing we explained, this space, sky, this thing between us. So the embodiment of this thing and of prana is the word was used here in the Sanskrit. So of akasha and prana. And prana, we understand prana as in pranayama, as in when we translate pranayama as breathing exercises, which actually means containing prana. But prana isn't just the air you breathe. Prana is, of course, the life energy. It's like a cosmic energy. It's a life force. So it's a force of existence. It's not just, just the stuff we're breathing in and out. That's a way of energy coming in and out of our bodies. And that's, if you don't do that, that's why you quickly die, because you run out of this crucial bit of energy you need. But it's also just the totality, so you can have prana. For example, again in the Yoga Sutras, in Patanjali talks about a fourth type of prana outside the body. So he's talking about this energy, the energy field. So what may be comparable to the qi, in Chinese philosophy and practice. So you have to see Krishna as the akash and the prana vibrating, within Krishna as the essence of those things. And by doing that, then you could pick up this power. So let's go back to the purport. The word prana indicates that the Lord is the personified life air of the individual living entities and for the total aggregate of life forms. Ultimately, the pure devotees meditate on the supreme vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And thus are able to hear the speech originating from liberated living entities far beyond the material universe. Any living entity can hear such discussions by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, as you are now doing, Bhagavad-gita, and other such literatures. One who has properly understood the opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead finds all perfection, mystic and otherwise, in Krishna consciousness. Okay, verse 20. Merging one's sight into the sun planet, and then the sun planet into one's eye. One should meditate on me as existing within the combination of sun and vision. Thus one acquires the power to see any distant thing. So this was the second power that Sanjaya had, that he used to narrate the events occurring in the battlefield of Kurukshetra to King Duryodhana, to King Dhritarashtra. So he was using this second power as well. So certainly do not try this at home, for God's sakes. Okay, do not think that merging one's sight into the sun planet means you're going to stare into the sun, because you will go blind. You won't have any kind of vision at all. What to speak of some mystic vision, you won't see anything if you just stare at the sun, okay? Don't show this, please. So, but somehow merging one's sight into the sun and the sun into one's eyes, again, this is a mystic meditation, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, samyama, some weird thing where you're meditating. I don't know how these things work. We don't know, there's no guru around to teach people how these things work, so we don't know. But Krishna is just what he's saying, just merges into the planet. Interesting, this purport has this comment has, this verse has no purport, because even the previous spiritual masters were like, yeah, we don't know how this works. So, verse 21. The yogi who completely absorbs his mind in me, and who then makes use of the wind that follows the mind to absorb the material body in me, attains through the potency of meditation on me the mystic perfection by which his body immediately follows his mind wherever it goes. So this you see all the time in the ancient texts, where these yogis would just kind of like whoop, 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 whoop. They would just kind of like appear in different places. They could just kind of like teletransport themselves, you know. And you see them just, it happens all the time. Again, these mystic powers sound really weird, but it is so prevalent, it's so common in all kinds of different texts and traditions and oral traditions, written texts, that he's just like, come on, you couldn't just be all, because, you know, like it wouldn't keep showing up. It's not necessary. You know, like it's not a necessary plot thing. It wasn't necessary for the plot, but it keeps like, it's like a thing happening. So this is another one. Somehow you, again, always, did you notice this is, you know, Krishna saying, always in me, like just, you know, just in this one little verse, he said, in me, on me, in me, 3 times he said me. So this is all about focusing your mind, you know, on Krishna, and then these little details of like, oh, Krishna, as like this, you know, like understanding certain very subtle aspects of God and the presence of God in very subtle aspects of nature. That's how they would operate. It's like science. You know, if you want to do science, you know, you can get really precise, right? You can't just like, it's like, oh, whatever. No, it's like exactly this atom and this thing with exactly this thing and this power. You know, everything's very precise. You know, these fantastically complex mathematical equations. It's very precise. It's not like something somewhere about that. No, it's exactly that thing. And so these yogis would do like exactly that specific thing, but with their minds, because their focus was so sharp, that they could just penetrate nature, like just in these little details, and then they could access these things because they were, again, like it's like a blunt instrument. Like our minds are like blunt instruments. So like focus on, you know, you can hardly focus on a house, you know, and your mind can even like, that's even like too fine a detail, a whole house. It's like your mind will be all over the place. You know, focus on like one piece of furniture, and you know, you can't, because you're like, oh, but what about the rest of the room, and it's on the floor and there's a wall behind it, and you know, like, but they were going really fine, like a subtle, you know, aspect, like almost like a conceptual aspect of nature. And then they could do things. But anyway, so this is the power to move around, to be able to go where your mind wants to. You know, you think of a place and you go there. Of course, lots of movies have used this superpower. Tad anuvayuna indicates that the particular subtle air that follows the mind. When the yogi merges this air together with the body and mind in Krishna by the potency of meditation on the Lord, his gross material body, like the subtle air, can follow the mind anywhere. This perfection is called Manojava. So Manojava would be very cool, right? That would save us a lot of airfares, airport, security. It would be wonderful. Of course, it would be a little dangerous if the wrong people had this Manojava. But anyway, it would be certainly a wonderful power to have. Verse 22. When the yogi, applying his mind in a certain way, desires to assume a particular form, that very form immediately appears. Such perfection is possible by absorbing the mind in the shelter of my inconceivable mystic potency, by which I assume innumerable forms. So his yoga bala, it's a nice term, mat yoga balam. So his mystic form, you absorb your mind in Krishna's bala power, yoga power, yoga. Bala means power, strength. So in Krishna's yoga bala, which allows him, of course, God manifests himself in so many different forms, in endless forms. And so if you meditate, again, samyama, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, if you can, if you could make your mind so sharp that it could just focus on this one aspect of Krishna's yoga bala, of his power to manifest in innumerable forms, then you could also assume these different forms. And again, this is a very common superpower. It's called Kamarupa. And this one you see all the time, and the demigods have Kamarupa. And interestingly, even in other traditions you see this power. If you study Greek mythology, you can see that the gods all had Kamarupa. Yeah, all the Greek gods, they had Kamarupa. The Olympians, they could do Kamarupa. Zeus is like doing Kamarupa all the time. In all the stories, he's Kamaruping all over the place. And not only him, but all the other ones, they're doing Kamarupa all over the place. They're really good at it. Like being this, being a lion, being an eagle, and this, and they're all Kamaruping all the time. So Kamarupa, again, it's one of those things that just keeps coming up all over the place. Like, where there's smoke, there's fire. So that, these things must exist. Of course, we just don't have the access to them yet. But so the demigods all have Kamarupa, for example. They all automatically have Kamarupa. They also have that other power of just showing up in different places whenever they want. So there are whole classes of beings you can be born into. You're just born with these powers. And Patanjali says that in the Yoga Sutras, after going through the whole Vibhuti-pad, chapter 3, he starts chapter 4 by saying, hey, and these powers you can also get them by mantras, by herbs, or by just karma, by birth. So, in the Vedas you have these different species, these different types of beings who are born with all these powers automatically. So, purport. This perfection is called Kamarupa, or the ability to assume any form that one desires, even the form of a demigod. The pure devote also, the asuras have Kamarupa. If you study, if you see the Krishna Leela, when Krishna was around, all these asuras were doing Kamarupa like mad to try to get to Krishna. It was very famous, like they would do Kamarupa becoming, a donkey, a beautiful woman, a bird, a snake. They were Kamaruping like mad as well, and in doing this thing. And then when they would die, they would assume they would lose their focus, their Kamarupa, and they would assume their natural form. So you see that also a lot in Krishna Leela and Krishna's childhood pastimes. A lot of Kamarupa. Kamarupa is like all over the place, big time. And of course, it's because of Kamarupa, the whole story of the Pandavas, it's also worth mentioning, is the story because of Kamarupa, because Pandava's father, King Pandu, he's hunting out one day and he shoots this couple. He wasn't, he did a mistake. He shot a couple copulating. It was a deer copulating, but it wasn't really a deer. It was actually Brahmanas who had done Kamarupa to assume the form of a deer to finally, have children, because they'd been doing austerities for so long. They just couldn't get into the vibe anymore in their human form, so they had done Kamarupa to assume the form of deer to be able to have sex and have a child. And that's when Pandu shoots and kills the male. He thought it was a deer. He could shoot deer. He was allowed to shoot deer. He didn't know he was a Brahmana yogi. So he kills a yogi, a Brahmana yogi, by mistake, because he was doing Kamarupa. This Brahmana was doing Kamarupa. So because of that, then he gets cursed and he can't have children. And then, of course, the Pandavas have to be born from different demigods, who, by the way, would use their power to travel by their minds when the mantra was invoked by Kunti. And they could immediately appear there and impregnate Kunti and go away. So there you see. lots of mystic yoga powers all over the place being used in changing the course of history. Okay. The pure devotees absorb their minds in a particular type of service to Lord Krishna and thus gradually assume a spiritual body for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. So this is something else. So in the purport here, they're saying, actually, we bhakti yogis, we do this too. It's just a different thing. We don't do it here in the material world. But on the highest level of bhakti, you understand that you have a swarupa, your own form. The same word, kamarupa, desire form. We have swarupa, your form. The same word that Patanjali uses in the beginning of the Yoga Sutras as well, that yoga is so that you can achieve swarupa, your form. Same word. So in bhakti, we achieve swarupa, but the swarupa we achieve is a particular form of our spiritual identity, of our true transcendental identity in our rasa, in our relationship with Krishna. So we assume a particular form to serve and please, with which we will serve and please Krishna in eternal Goloka Vrindavan, in God's abode. So we're also doing a slow version, a more, but an eternal, a sweeter, much better version of Kamarupa in our bhakti yoga practice. Thus, anyone who takes to the process of chanting the holy names of Krishna and follows the regulative principles of human life can acquire the ultimate perfection of Kamarupa, assuming an eternal spiritual body in the kingdom of God. So that was a nice little comment there. Verse 23. When a perfect yogi desires, this is a really creepy one, this is like the creepiest of all yogic powers. When a perfect yogi desires to enter another's body, super creepy, possession, he should meditate upon himself within the other body. And then, giving up his own gross body, he should enter into the other's body through the pathways of prana, of the air, as easily as a bee leaves one flower and flies to another. So this is a super creepy yogic power. And so the idea is that, again, good thing they don't have this power, So you'd have to have this perfect meditation, and then you perfectly meditate. Dharana, dhyan, samadhi, samyama. You do perfect samyama on this other person's body within. So like what it would be like to be within their body. Not just on the body, but on you being within that body. What would it be like to be within that body? Because we understand bodies are just machines. They're just like, machines made of material energy, just like a vehicle, it's like a car. So you can more easily imagine, what would it be like if I was driving that car? So you can handle that, you've probably done that. So what would it be like to be driving that car? But of course, this is like on a level of perfect, complete absorption and meditation, which we don't have. But the concept you've done before, you're like, I wonder what it would be like to drive that car, Ferrari, Humvee, especially boys like doing that, So what would it be like to have that car? So, but then you could do that with somebody else's body. What would it be like to be operating within that body? And then the yogi would leave his body. Again, don't try this at home. Would leave his body. This is called the gross body. It would leave the body, and through prana, through these channels, enter into this other body. And again, this is also a power that is mentioned by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras. So this creepy power is there, mentioned in many different books. So then you would enter that and experience that body. Not sure what happens with the soul that's in the other body, if he's just kind of like we see in the Hollywood demon possession movies, where the demon takes over but the person is still there trapped or something, like, oh, I'm trapped in a black room, and and the demon's like actually in charge of the body. So I'm not sure if that's what would happen, like the person is just like feeling trapped, if they just like kind of go into a coma, or if they actually get kicked out of the body and have to take another birth somewhere else. Not sure. Pretty creepy though, but that's the idea. Okay. So Krishna says it's very easy, just like a bee flies from one flower to another, the yogi can just... And I don't know if I told you this, but this is how, I don't know if you've heard of the book Kama Sutra, kind of famous. So the Kama Sutras, which are a whole book on, all these different sexual positions and all these different, very creative ideas for having sex in different ways, a very famous book. So this book was actually written by a celibate. You're like, what? It's like, how can a celibate write a whole book on like super advanced sex positions? Like, what is going on here? Something's wrong. So what the story is that he did this yogi who wrote this book, he went into the body of this king, and the kings were famously like super, like Hugh Hefner types, they just, some of the kings just like, they're really into it, endless women, harems, they had the whole thing. So he went into this Hugh Hefner super sex king, who was, and then he had, so he did all the things, he was there, and then he came back and wrote the book. That's the story of the Kama Sutras. That's how you wrote it, like how a celibate monk wrote the Kama Sutras. So, there you go. One may admire, here we go. As air is inhaled into the body through the nostrils and mouth, similarly, the life air of the yogi's subtle body travels through the pathways of external air and easily enters into the body of another person, just as a bee easily flies from flower to flower. One may admire a heroic man or a beautiful woman and desire to experience life within their extraordinary material body. Such opportunities are available through the mystic perfection called Parakaya Praveshanam, pure devotees, being absorbed in meditation upon the spiritual form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are not actually attracted to any material body. Thus, the devotees remain transcendental and satisfied on the platform of eternal life. So, of course, all these powers, it's like, real yogis, they don't want these powers, they don't want anything, they don't want, like I've explained in the past lessons on these topics, well, we don't want these things. We just want to be at peace, following our Dharma, thinking of Krishna. You just want to get through here. If you're smart, you just want to get through here. Just get out of here. That's what we're doing. You want to just go back home, back to God. You want to be with Krishna. This is a horrible, crazy place. You don't want anything to do with this material world. It's nasty here. Nobody's got it good. Everything like that body, whatever body you might think is nice, that body is going to get old as well, and it's going to get problems, and it's going to have pains, and it's going to have a confused life, and the mind's anxiety. It's just, there's no safe haven in the material world. So you want to just be at peace, take it easy, focus on your Dharma, be a good person, and go back home, back to Godhead. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoy that and have the rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love. Hare Krishna.